So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the steps to constructing circuit number 2 of our TinkerCAD circuits lab. So in number 2 on your doc, it says to construct a series circuit using the components listed below. So the first thing we need is a 9-volt battery. Again, I just like to pull all the components in first in the beginning so I have everything laid out. I also need a 220 ohm resistor. Change that to 220 ohms. We need an LED. I like to always stick with red. We need a 10 kilo ohm potentiometer. I'm going to pull in a potentiometer, change the value to 10 kilo ohms. We need a push button switch. And then last but not least, we need a breadboard. And again, I always like to use this small breadboard. Okay, so just like in our circuit 1 that we did last week, the first thing you always want to do is wire up the battery to the breadboard to bring power and ground. So I'm going to start with the negative side. And again, once we start doing this more and more, you'll kind of get a feel for how it looks neatest. You definitely do want to try your best to make your wires as neat as possible. Changing that to red because red symbolizes power. Okay, so right now we have power and ground going to the breadboard. The next thing that I'm going to wire up is the potentiometer. Now again, we don't want to wire up the potentiometer horizontal across a row because all the pins in this row are connected. So if I wire the potentiometer up horizontal like this, it's just wired up to itself. So I actually need to turn this and we will wire it up right there. So if you think back to our lessons about potentiometers, if you wire the potentiometer on terminal 1 and terminal 2, so the two outer terminals, it's just a fixed resistance. So even if you change the wiper, it's still going to stay the same resistance. So we want to hook up the first terminal and then what they call the wiper terminal, so the first and second terminals, in order to achieve variable resistance. So I'm going to go from power to the first terminal of the potentiometer. And again, I'm not plugging this wire directly into this pin, okay? You don't want to have multiple things in a pin. I can essentially hook this wire up to any pin in this row to bring power to this spot of the potentiometer. Do not plug the wire directly into the same pin as the potentiometer or any component for that matter. Okay. So after that, I'm going to wire up my LED. So again, we need to turn our LED. And I'm going to place it vertically. Again, I don't want to place it horizontally because then it's going to be connected to itself. And I need to connect the anode of the LED to the middle terminal of the potentiometer. So I'm just going to go in the pin right next to that leg of the potentiometer and bring this wire down. And I'll just change it to yellow for now. So again, I'm not plugging this wire directly into the anode. I don't want two things in one pin. I can even bring the LED all the way over here and it's still going to be connected. So please don't worry too much about plugging things directly into each other. Okay. After the LED, then I need to wire up the resistor, and I can actually just grab the resistor and I can go like this. Okay, so the resistor is connected to the cathode of the LED because these two legs are in the same horizontal row. Again, do not wire up the resistor like this. You do not want two things in one pin. You can put it in any of these open pins within that same row of the cathode of the LED. Last but not least, we have our push button switch. And again, we need to turn it because we need to wire this push button switch over the break in the breadboard so that the two sides are not connected to each other. I'm going to connect the second side of the resistor to one side of the push button switch. Just going to change it to yellow so it's consistent. Again, I do not want to bring this side of the wire and plug it in like that. Okay, that's 2 things per pin. You don't want it. You can plug it into any other open pin in row 15 and it'll still get power. Last thing to kind of complete the loop is we need to bring the second side, of the push button switch to ground. And I'm going to change that to black. So now, if I start simulation, press the push button switch, the LED should turn on. Super bright right now. You see that little circle with the line in it. That just means that the LED is shining really bright. I can then grab the wiper, change the amount of resistance that this potentiometer is providing, hit the push button. It's a lot dimmer. Keep moving it around. The push button again, it's still a lot dimmer. So you can kind of change the brightness of the LED by changing the value of the potentiometer.